At dinner, my son-in-law laughed. "How does it feel to be a loser?" My heart stopped when I asked. I will never forget that moment. It was a simple family dinner, the kind where laughter usually bounces off the walls, but that night the atmosphere was thick. I felt a knot in my stomach tighten with every passing second. My son-in-law's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Evelyn, my daughter, sat across from me. Her head dropped, eyes wide and glassy. I could see the anger simmering just beneath her surface. I wanted to reach out to tell her it wasn't true, that I wasn't a loser. But the truth was, ever since I lost my job, I felt like I was teetering on the edge of helplessness. The silence after his taunt was deafening. My heart pounded wildly in my chest, drowning out the clinking of forks and low murmurs of guests in the restaurant. It had all started months ago when I was laid off. One moment, I was a respected employee, confident in my abilities. The next, I stood alone in my empty office, a cardboard box of my life in my arms. I left behind years of dedication, countless late nights and sacrifices. I had hoped my family would understand, but they didn't see that side of me. They only saw the fallout. I glanced around the table. My wife, Clara, stared at me, her brow furrowed, sensing the impending storm. My younger son, Leo, fidgeted, filling the air with awkward tension. He was next to Evelyn, and I could see him squeezing her hand under the table. Was he trying to comfort her or keep her from exploding? "You've changed, Dad," Evelyn finally blurted out before I could speak. The words were like a knife. I struggled to breathe. Her tone was sharp, laced with disappointment. I felt every pair of eyes on me, judging, waiting for me to respond. "Everyone has their ups and downs," I stammered, every word feeling inadequate. I was fighting to hold on, to convince them and myself that this wasn't the end. But the laughter from my son-in-law cut deeper than any wound. It echoed in my ears, reminding me of my failures. How did I let it come to this? I caught glimpses of laughter from nearby tables, people lost in their own worlds. I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all, at the notion that my struggles were a punchline. But the lump in my throat threatened to choke me, and I pressed my trembling hands against the wood of the table, fighting for composure. Then came the unexpected. The restaurant's front doors flew open, a gust of cold wind sweeping through, carrying with it a shadowy figure. Heads turned and my heart raced. Who was that? Why were they here at this moment? The energy in the room shifted, a collective curiosity. In a heartbeat, I was no longer the focus. But as they stepped forward, the familiar features became clearer. I gasped. What were they doing here? The question loomed heavy between the two worlds colliding: my family's laughter and this haunting, unexpected arrival. I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had just taken a dangerous turn. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The shadowy figure stepped into the ambient light of the restaurant, a cascade of recognition flooding me as I faced the intrusion. It was my former boss, Daniel. Why was he here? The air turned heavy, rippling with an undercurrent of tension that mixed with the unease already weighing on my heart. Daniel's presence pulled every eye in the room, curious, judgmental, bewildered, back toward me, as though I were the one who had drawn him in with a magnet. He stood there, confident and successful, a stark contrast to the nest of self-doubt that had entangled me since losing my job. It was the kind of sight that could break a heart, especially the moment I noticed the slight smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth, as if he were privy to my painful secret. "Evan," he called out, an odd note of familiarity in his voice, slicing through the clamor of cutlery and hushed conversations that had fallen into a thick silence. I forced myself to meet his gaze, the heat of embarrassment surging through me, choking whatever words I had ready to defend myself. Evelyn, still reeling, glanced at me. Her face morphed from anger to confusion, her emotions swirling as she took in the sudden turn of events. Leo clutched her hand tighter, his eyes darting between his sister and the man I had once idolized at the top of my professional life. Clara's brow knitted deeper, sensing that I was about to be pulled into yet another storm. Yes, it's me, I replied, unnerved by the quiver in my voice. What brings you here? I came to check out the renovations. It looks good, Daniel remarked casually, but his eyes held a glint of mischief. And what better time to catch up than during dinner? Fancy running into you in the wild, huh? Laughter erupted around the room again. Little bubbles of mirth that felt like pinpricks against my skin. I couldn't help but wonder if he knew the turmoil I was experiencing. If he understood the weight his words carried, considering we had spent years working side by side. My heart sank at the thought that he might even relish this moment. A chance to remind me of my downfall. With a deep breath, I mustered my courage. It's good to see you, Daniel. I hope things are well from your side. My tone felt too flat, lifeless even. Every syllable dripped with forced politeness that I barely managed to pull off. Couldn't he be better, he replied, and in that moment, I sensed a sharpness to his smile, almost predatory. But hey, I hope those extracurriculars keep you busy since you know job hunting can be such a soul-crushing affair. The words landed with a resounding thud, echoing in the marrow of my bones. They were playful only for his amusement, a happy punchline harvested from my despair. I glanced back at my family. Evelyn's anger simmered anew, Leo's face twisted in confusion, and Clara's eyes pleaded with me to deflect the strike. Without thinking, I stood. Excuse me for a moment. I need to step outside, I muttered, my voice barely audible above the silence left in the wake of Daniel's jibe. I pushed past the chair behind me, steadying myself against the mound of emotions spiraling through me. I needed to breathe desperately. The cold night air hit me like a bucket of ice water, jolting me into clarity. As I leaned against the restaurant's brick wall, staring at the flickering lights beyond the glass, all I could think was how I had reached this point, how feelings of inadequacy had transformed into my current reality. Yet, even as the chills seeped through my clothes, an unexpected warmth began to envelop me. A flicker of kindness appeared in the distance. I turned to see a stranger approaching. She was bundled in a thick coat, her shoulders hunched against the wind, but as she reached me, her face blossomed into a beautiful smile. Hey there, looks like you could use a friend, she said. Her voice bright and imbued with a genuine tenderness that made me momentarily forget the turmoil inside me. Before I could respond, however, a sudden movement caught my eye. As I turned, Daniel appeared in the doorway, the smirk still plastered across his face. Evan, what's wrong? Did I scare you off? Come on, it was just a joke. The kindness from the stranger was warm, but the chill from Daniel's words ripped through me once again. I exchanged one last glance with the woman, trying to gauge if she could sense the vortex of emotions swirling wildly inside me. But just then her smile faltered. At that moment our connection shattered as she turned away, apprehension flickering in her eyes, unwilling to be caught in this downward spiral. Just a joke, I whispered, bitterness prickling at the corners of my heart. But back inside, among the laughter and the simple comforts of my family, I felt irreparably drawn to this abyss. What lurked beneath the surface was an unyielding fear that it was only going to get worse. Evelyn, I called through the door. But the words stuck to my throat as Daniel stepped forward, challenging me in front of everyone once more, sealing the fate of the night. The last glimmer of hope I had began to dim, and as I looked back at her face, I realized I was losing not just a job but the very connection with my family I had committed to protect. And in that terrible moment of realization, I wondered if anything would ever be the same. As I stood there, legs trembling, the weight of Daniel's mocking gaze pinned me to the spot. The laughter of friends and family resonated ominously in the background, underscoring my isolation. My heart raced, a drumbeat of anxiety echoing in the hollow silence that followed my tentative call to Evelyn. Come on, Evan. You're not going to let this get to you, are you? Daniel taunted, his voice a mocking sing-song. You know, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I always believed, oh wait. You're not old, just out of practice. Evelyn's expression shifted, fury boiling to the surface as she rose, the table suddenly feeling too small. That's enough, Daniel. She yelled, her voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. Everyone turned, but his smugness didn't waver. The emotional turbulence etched on my sister's face matched the storm brewing inside me, a deep sense of shame curling in on itself. See, you've got a cheerleader, he quipped, glancing back toward the group. Their eyes flickered between us, uncertain of whether to laugh or gasp. But as I met Evelyn's eyes, I knew our bond tightened, a tether forged in shared adversity. She was standing up for me, for us, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this battle. He might not have a job, but it takes courage to stand up to you, Evelyn retorted, her voice strong yet laced with a tremor. You're not half the man you think you are, Daniel. Hiding behind your fancy suits and bravado doesn't make you superior. Across the room, Leo's face had paled, confusion making his eyes dart between the adults. I could see him struggling to grasp the situation, why his uncle was attacking me, and why his sister was defending me. In that moment I realized that he was observing everything, taking in the tension that hung in the air like a dense fog. Why don't we just go? I suggested quietly, my hands tighter on the edge of the table. We don't have to do this here. I don't want to ruin everyone's dinner. Ruin their dinner? Daniel laughed, his voice dripping with feigned concern. And miss out on seeing you squirm? No, I think this is exactly the right place to expose you. Enough! Evelyn shouted louder this time, causing the whole restaurant to turn. You're pathetic, Daniel. Leaving Evan alone to handle your destruction. The finality in her voice hung pregnant in the air. A plea wrapped in defiance. I watched as Daniel's expression shifted slightly, an imperceptible crack in his armor. For a moment I thought I could sense vulnerability, but it vanished in a heartbeat, replaced with a twisted sense of triumph, as if he thrived on the chaos he stirred. But it wasn't just Daniel who had come into focus. The stranger from outside seemed to linger at the edge of my mind. Her warm smile was a stark contrast to the harsh reality of my life. The moment of kindness melted away the icy tendrils of despair that had wrapped around my heart, reminding me that even in darkness, glimmers of light could shine through. Why don't you talk about how you left me high and dry? I interjected suddenly, the words erupting before I even knew I had them within me. How you walked out while I was left to pick up the pieces. His smugness faltered, and I felt a rush of adrenaline, an unexpected surge of power that came from finally voicing my truth. Wait, what do you mean? Evelyn asked, subtle worry creasing her brow. Didn't you hear? Daniel's voice grew sharp, desperate to turn the tide. It's not just his job losses. It's what he did that led to it. His smirk transformed into a sneer. What you did made it easy for me to let him go. The room slipped into a thick silence, our family absorbing his words like a gut punch. Evelyn's eyes widened, mingling shock and disbelief, while Leo's innocent confusion cracked further, threatening to pull apart the family tapestry I had fought so hard to maintain. I could sense the tide shifting, could hear the whispers beginning to stir across the table, and just when I thought I might regain footing, I froze. The additional weight of his revelation felt unbearable. I stood, exposed, unsure of the truth that lay behind Daniel's insinuation, casting doubts over everything I believed. What did you do, Evan? Clara asked softly, her eyes narrowing slightly, concern etching across her face. Nothing, I snapped, but even to my own ears it sounded weak, a flimsy barricade against the tidal wave of scrutiny. Just I endured. I lost my job, that was it, I swear. And then it hit me, the air shifted, the energies in the room heightened. Perhaps I had shielded my family too well, keeping them from realizing the depth of my struggles. My once secure facade crumbled, revealing the fractures that formed beneath. But you didn't just lose your job. Evelyn pressed gently, her voice filled with a quivering hope. You lost yourself, didn't you? The question hung, throbbing in the air, reverberating with unanswered concerns. And just as I sought to express it all, to share the weight I carried, a picture of the stranger crossed my mind, a reminder of kindness and a flicker of strength in unexpected places. As Daniel's laughter collided with our confusion, the night swallowed my thoughts. I caught a glimpse of the stranger through the window again, standing alone, her warmth gradually fading into dimness. I felt a gnawing ache to reach out to grasp onto that kindness, but all I could do was watch as hope faded once more, spiraling into the shadows. Evan, we can't let him do this, Leo finally said, voice strong, rising above the din of laughter. We need to know. And there, the gravity of his words landed like a cataclysm. I could feel the walls closing in, pushing the truth out into the open, but would it lead to liberation or devastation? As I looked between my sister's fierce resolve and Daniel's smug anticipation, I was left teetering on the precipice of revelation, filled with both terror and an unexpected yearning for truth, for healing, and for the possibility of forgiveness. The restaurant buzzed with an uneasy tension that wrapped around me like an unwelcome shroud. I could feel Evelyn's fierce protection, her unwavering belief in me creating a sanctuary amidst the chaos. But Daniel's voice slid through the air like poison, corrupting any sense of safety I had clung to. Leo's declaration struck a chord deep in my heart, reverberating with the precariousness of innocence suddenly exposed to the harsh realities of adulthood. I could see it in his face: fear, confusion, and a brave determination to support his father, yet I felt a sudden urge to shield him, to bury my struggles deeper, to keep the family myths intact. "Leo, please," I began, but my voice faltered, thin against the weight of expectations. "This isn't, is this true?" Evelyn interjected, her gaze urgent and insistent. "Did you lose your job because of something you did? Something I don't know about?" For a fraction of a heartbeat the world stilled. My thoughts collided, sharp and jagged. I was tempted to reach out to her, to explain how lost I felt, how each day had merged into a cloud of despair. But fear took hold, the fear of shattering the illusions that bound us together. And then Daniel leaned back, savoring the uncertainty like a connoisseur at a wine tasting, cherishing each struggling note. "You're going to tell the whole story now, Evan? Or are you going to let your family continue to believe the version where you're a victim? It's rather quaint." "Stop." The word was out of my mouth before I had time to strategize, cutting through the air with a desperate urgency. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I thought I did," Daniel shot back, a glint of malice in his eyes, "but it sounds like I've been too generous with your narrative." He turned to the table with another bitter laugh. "What a treat for the family, huh? A sob story of a loser." As embarrassment pooled like heat beneath my skin, I could feel Clara's unease, her cringe as she tried to navigate this familial minefield. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, an unexpected act of warmth that sparked a fleeting glimmer of hope amid the clouds. "Isn't it time you told us what really happened?" Evelyn pressed again, the fear in her voice almost palpable, begging me to share a truth that hung over us like an unopened letter filled with unresolved conflict. The weight of her expectation felt suffocating. I wrestled with my own demons, with the failure of not only losing my job but questioning whether I had lost the very essence of who I was. I thought back to the stranger again. Her kindness contrasted sharply with the venom dripping from Daniel's words. Was it possible to extend that kindness to myself? To uncover forgiveness for the man I had become? "Evelyn," I began, but the words choked in my throat, tangled in fear and uncertainty. It would mean admitting, for the first time, the reality of my struggles, the shattering echo of failure. "Evan," she said softly, leaning closer, "whatever you say, we're here for you. We'll get through it together." Just then, the flickering candlelight cast shadows that danced along our table, the ambience transforming into something almost ethereal. I took a steadying breath, trying to summon the courage swirling at the back of my mind, the encouragement of the stranger, the reality that acceptance and healing could start with my truth. But Daniel's voice cut through my brewing resolve, sharper than any knife. "Come on, this isn't a therapy session. You don't actually expect us to feel sorry for you, do you?" And with that, a sudden thought crashed into my mind, a revelation bubbling just beneath the surface. What if I didn't just lose my job? What if I lost the trust of my family too? What if Daniel was right, a flickering image of a family fractured by secrets and lies danced before my eyes, threatening to unravel everything I had spent years trying to preserve? As the veils of uncertainty grew thicker, I took another breath, ready to divulge my truth, but the sudden ringing of my phone jolted me from my thoughts. The sound sliced the atmosphere as everyone's eyes darted toward the table. "Is that yours, Evan?" Clara asked, her tone shifting from concern to something more agitated. My heart sank as I pulled the phone from my pocket, glancing at the screen. It was an unknown number, but the instinctual fear prickled the back of my mind. I lifted it to answer, despite grappling with the grip of anxiety, but as I did, Daniel leaned in, his expression transforming from mockery to genuine intrigue. "I'd love to know what thrilling news awaits you. Maybe it's a new job?" With shaky hands I answered, and at that precise moment, the air around us held a potent mix of hope and dread. "Is this Evan Adams?" a voice on the other end asked, uncompromising and direct. And all at once the restaurant faded away into a shadowy blur. The laughter drowned under the tide of my racing heart. "Yes," I whispered, anticipation crackling like static in the distance. But before I could gather my thoughts, the voice continued, and the proclamation struck me cold. "We have an opportunity we think you might be perfect for." A surge of hope tinged with fear pulsed through me, mingled with the weight of Daniel's mocking laughter echoing in my ears. There, on the precipice of possibility, I battled with a new tide of emotions, an unexpected chance that could change everything swirled with the remnants of my shame and uncertainty. What awaited me? Would this chance lead to redemption, or further complicate the already frayed bonds of my family? I glanced around the table, taking in the mixture of concerned and hopeful faces, realizing that my answer to the call would shape not just my path, but the very core of my family's journey. The moment hung in the air like an uninvited guest, each heartbeat a loud reminder of the choices I faced. We believe you can lead a new initiative, the voice on the phone continued, oblivious to the tempest raging within me. It's ambitious, but we see potential in your experience. I struggled to concentrate, the words blurring as the images of my family swirled in and out of focus. My gaze landed on Evelyn, her eyes wide and full of hope, and by chance I caught Leo's. There was a mixture of faith and confusion etched in his youthful features, my brave little warrior standing at the edge of innocence. And if I accept? I asked the voice, the challenge hanging deliberately between my words. I hesitated, sensing Daniel's amused smirk inches away, like a vulture waiting for the inevitable collapse. What's the catch? Just a standard interview process, but we have faith you'll impress. There was an almost palpable certainty in the speaker's tone. Consider this an invitation to reclaim your narrative. Reclaim my narrative. What a powerful phrase, yet I felt like I was standing in quicksand, the ground beneath me shifting with the weight of unsaid words and unconfessed fears. Evelyn's voice broke through my tunnel vision, a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. She leaned closer, her expression steady despite the tremor in her voice. What did they say? I opened my mouth to speak but found myself ensnared by the pressure of the moment. They have an opportunity for me. The words barely emerged, a whisper of my potential, trembling on the edges of despair. An opportunity, Daniel chided, rolling his eyes. Isn't that sweet? What are you going to do, crawl back to a job that you don't deserve? Enough, Clara snapped, her grip tightening around my hand, surprisingly powerful. Not now, Daniel. This is not the time to belittle him. The tension at the table shifted, flaring up like a spark catching dry leaves. I could see a flicker of surprise in Daniel's eyes, momentarily caught off guard by the sudden fierceness of agreement from Clara. It felt as if, for just a fleeting second, the family was coming together against a common foe. We're all here for you, Leo urged, his youthful voice steadying my spiraling thoughts. You deserve a chance to explain this. Do I? My voice carried an edge of skepticism. Isn't it all complicated? What if I fail again? Then you get back up, Leo countered, his youthful conviction filling the air with warmth. You don't give up. That's what you taught me. Evelyn looked on. Her face softened with pride and worry as if the two emotions were woven together inextricably. Every bit of humility I had ever felt rushed back over me. In that moment, facing my family, I craved that chance for redemption more than I'd thought possible. But as determination danced within me, Daniel's derisive laughter snatched it away. Look at that, he remarked, leaning back in his chair. Such heartfelt bonding in the midst of inevitable failure. Just what we all need to celebrate. Before I could voice a retort, the phone erupted with another call, the sharp ring contrasting with the heartwarming moment we had just shared. Trepidation knotted in my stomach again. It's probably them calling back, I muttered, the numbers wriggling on the screen like an arm wrestling match against my willpower. It's the same number, I hesitated before answering. Hello? Evan Adams? The tone was assertive, demanding my utmost attention. Yes. Prepare your materials. You're our best candidate, but you'll need to meet with the board tomorrow morning. A sudden shudder whispered through me, churning with anxiety and anticipation. A knot of raw emotion formed in my throat as I caught Evelyn's gaze again. Far more intense now, filled with something deeper. Was it hope? Then the voice inserted an unexpected twist. But I'd like to warn you. There are others who have been considered as well. They won't take it lightly if you show up unprepared. A weight fell on my chest, heavy and immovable. Why are you telling me this? I found myself asking, my voice trembling. Because the voice intoned, this opportunity is significant, and should anything go wrong, I know the repercussions will reach far beyond just you. The line went silent, and the buzzing atmosphere surged with tension once more. My eyes darted around the table, landing on each face, which now wore a different mask, their unwavering love clashing violently with the shadows of my ineptitude. "Do whatever it takes," Evelyn whispered, her voice laden with a strength that seemed to mend the cracks forming in my spirit. "We believe in you." The notion hung in the air, a fragile thread of unity against an impending storm. Yet I felt just as vulnerable, slipping through the cracks of hesitation. "Evan," Daniel's voice dripped with sarcasm as if he delightfully fed on my indecision. "Prepare for what exactly? More disgrace? Just stop," I expounded, feeling the swell of something fierce and primal rising within me, as if a long-buried fire was igniting. "You don't get to dictate my worth." And just as I rallied against the crushing weight of expectations, Clara gasped, her eyes widening. I think the food is ready." But before we could process her sudden exclamation, I glanced again at the phone, the implication swirling like a tempest in my chest. How do I reclaim my story when the very act of rising also posed a threat to those I loved? Now, standing uncertainly on a precipice of opportunity, I felt a stirring deep inside as the cliff of doubt loomed just ahead. What costs would my redemption bring upon those I cherished? And whose voice would decide my fate, my own or Daniel's relentless taunts reverberating in the distance? With one final glance at my family, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was mere moments away from making a choice that would set off a cascade of consequences beyond my imagining. The air thickened as the last remnants of Clara's voice faded into a charged silence. The walls of our home felt suddenly constrictive, as if they were witnesses to an unseen struggle that had just begun to unfold. I held my breath, half expecting the laughter that usually followed Daniel's jabs. But the moment offered only quiet, like the calm before a storm. "What does that even mean?" I finally managed, feeling heat rise in my cheeks as I confronted Daniel. "A loser? Is that how you see me?" The table shifted, charged with tension, but Daniel leaned back. Innocent laughter plastered on his face as if his words hadn't left a mark. "It's just feedback, Evan," he said, shrugging. "You've had your chance and now it's time to face the music. Or do you plan to fail yet again?" The harshness of his words rang in my ears, a relentless echo that pulled at the frayed edges of my resolve. Clara was still wide-eyed, caught between her loyalty to her husband and her instinct to protect me. Leo was observing, his youthful heart somewhere in the middle, while Evelyn wore a mask of concern, struggling to find balance in our increasingly volatile clan. "Do you really believe in me?" I ventured, my eyes locking onto Evelyn's, searching for an anchor amidst the raging sea. What if this opportunity turns out to be like the others? The vulnerability surged beneath my skin, transforming my frame into something raw and exposed. She shifted slightly, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. "Evan, no one gets it right the first time. You've taught me that failure is just a stepping stone, a place we learn about ourselves. Embrace it. Evelyn, this isn't just an opportunity. It's a high-stakes gamble," I insisted. "What if this is the moment I crash and burn forever?" My heart raced, pounding against my ribs as fragments of bitterness surged. Could I really beat my past? "Then we'll get through it together," she said softly, the strength of her words a faint light teasing away the shadows. "Please remember that your worth doesn't hinge on how this goes or what Daniel says." She was right, yet navigating that belief felt like trying to grab smoke. The weight of Daniel's voice danced alongside potential failure, creating a melody I was almost too familiar with to resist. "Why would I take advice from a loser?" Daniel piped up mockingly, unnecessarily loud in my ear. "Perhaps it's time to rethink the situation and your life." I felt my pulse quicken, the urge to retaliate rising like bile. But luck was on my side. Before I could voice my next thought, Clara stood, the fists of her hands clenched against the table's edge. "Enough, Daniel. This is beyond cruel. We're family. We should support one another." Daniel's expression transformed momentarily, an aghast look flashing across his face. I had never seen Clara so determined. "You think you're being clever, but this isn't just a game to Evan. Get it through your head." Instead of the expected defensive stance from Daniel, I noticed something uncharacteristic. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his features as he held her gaze. Perhaps for the first time he realized the tide was shifting and not in his favor. "Mom, it's not about taking sides," he finally said, but the tremor in his tone betrayed him. It's about facing reality. A brief silence hung in the air, and in that moment, I chose to slip away from the fracturing atmosphere at the table. I felt the need for space, a sanctuary and familiarity, where I wouldn't be reminded of my shortcomings. I stepped out into the cool evening air, the quiet settling around me like a calming blanket. I stared at the stars, their light sparse and muted, overshadowed by the heavy clouds of uncertainty I had dragged along with me. I could hear the low rumble of the argument within the house, Clara's voice rising defiantly against the din of Daniel's barbs. But then from behind me, I heard the soft click of the door opening. Leo stepped outside, his small frame dwarfed by the vastness of night. "Evan," he began, his voice almost a whisper, "can we talk?" I turned to face him, his earnest gaze a soothing balm against the turbulence of my thoughts. "Are you okay?" he asked, the innocence of his youth radiating through the chill in the air. I'm trying to be," I admitted, forcing a shaky smile. "It's just complicated." "About what?" Daniel said, Leo continued, his brows slightly furrowed. "It doesn't define you. You're my dad, and I believe you can do this, whatever it takes." His sincerity filled the night air, and I felt a wave of warmth wash over me, a lump formed in my throat. How had this boy, so young, stripped my emotions bare with just a few words? I took a deep breath, trying to find the resilience I needed to muster. "Do you really think so, buddy?" He nodded vigorously, his youthful intensity shining like a beacon. "I know so. Remember when you taught me how to ride my bike? I fell so many times, but you said I should keep getting back up. That's what makes someone strong. You're just like that, Dad." Hope began to flicker like the stars above, momentarily pushing back against the shadows Daniel cast. But then came the chill of doubt. Was I really any different from then? Just as I opened my mouth to respond, a cacophony erupted from inside again, Clara's voice breaking through the intensity of Daniel's. "You have no idea what he's been through. Why defend him? It's not like he's worth fighting for." Daniel snapped. I felt the air leave my lungs as panic ignited in my chest. Their voices grew louder, like a crashing wave about to descend, swallowing memories and promises I had barely begun to hold on to. I quickly crouched down to Leo's level. "Stay out here, buddy." Before he could respond, I turned back to the door, fear spurring me forward. Each step was an echo of the weight pressing against my chest. I stepped inside, determined to reclaim my space, my voice, my narrative, but as I crossed the threshold, I caught the unyielding glint in Daniel's eyes, a storm brewing on the cusp, and I knew in an instant the battles ahead would not just be for me but for us all. The argument reverberated against the painted walls like an anguished symphony, punctuated by gasps and muted cries. Clara and Daniel stood at opposite ends of an emotional battlefield, Evelyn desperately trying to mediate while Leo waited for me, silent but attentive. My heart raced as I stepped closer to the fray, cold sweat pooling in my palms. "What's worth fighting for?" Daniel sneered, "when you're already on the verge of failure." With each word he tossed, they felt like stones hitting the ground, sharpening the already fragile tensions within our family. "But this isn't just about failure," Clara screamed, her anger rippling through her as if she were exerting a force against him. "It's about support and love and believing in one another, especially him." Her voice cracked, the ache behind her words breaking through as she stepped forward, placing herself squarely between us. "Love? What kind of love allows someone to wallow in mediocrity?" Daniel's disbelief dripped with disdain, and I could feel the betrayal brewing in the air, thick and suffocating. Clara's face flushed with passion, and in that moment, she became a warrior. "You know nothing of Evan's struggles. You haven't been there to see him fight against his own shadows." I felt the tears building behind my eyes. All those years of scarred resilience, nights spent wrestling despair, the invisible battles that had become my everyday, and here was Clara, standing strong for me in an arena that felt so demoralizing. Yet I also felt the heaviness of Daniel's words gnawing at my confidence, each taunt unraveling a stitched tapestry of hope I had clung to. As the heat of the argument enveloped the room, I found my own strength piecing together. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady even as my trembling hands betrayed my calm facade. "You can judge me all you want. You can put your finger on a scale that weighs potential against disappointment." The room fell silent. The force of my words had momentarily quelled the raging tide. "But you're wrong if you think that your opinion matters most. I know what I've faced. What you face is the reality of your failures. Daniel countered, his jaw set like iron. You want to be my family? Stand on your own 2 feet before you take others down with you. His eyes sparked with a confidence born from years of mocking and belittlement. I felt trapped, each breath a suffocating reminder of my shortcomings. A flurry of emotions raced within me. What if I'm not okay? I challenged, my voice rising as panic seeped through, inching dangerously from my throat. What if winning this battle feels just too heavy for me? What if I fail again? Then you fail, Clara replied, her voice fierce yet softened by sadness, understanding the weight of my fear. But you stand back up. That's what counts. That's where your worth lies. Easier said than done, Daniel quipped, cutting through the advocacy with a sharp laugh. You're all wasting your breath on a dreamer. He's not going to turn into something he's not. The table began to rattle. Leo, unable to contain his youthful courage, stepped forward again, his tiny form dwarfed by the tension still radiating through the room. You're wrong. I believe in him and he's my dad. Suddenly, the echoes of our emotional entanglement didn't feel like weights but walls sheltering us. I could feel the energy shift, the undercurrents of compassion igniting in the space around us, especially as Leo stood resolute in defense of me. The spark radiating from his small confession began to illuminate our dim family dynamic in ways I hadn't dared hope for. That moment, I realized I wasn't alone in this storm. My family, my son, my wife, my sister-in-law were standing with me, wielding love like armor. They might not have the answers, but together we found strength. But seconds later, just as hope began to shimmer like the dusk outside, in came the heavy effects of reality crashing through the frail optimism. The door swung open, allowing a gust of chilly air to filter in alongside Lily, my brother's sudden partner, standing aghast in the frame. Even her presence felt charged, and I saw how her eyes registered the fractious tension that had filled our home. Guy, she stuttered, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as she pieced together the scene unfolding before her. What's going on? Everyone turned to her, and I quickly sensed the pendulum swing again, our fight now treading perilously close to a revelation. I met Clara's gaze, a silent understanding passed between us. Whatever was about to happen, it could shatter the fragile connection we had nudged back together. Lily, I began, but she took a step inside, wet strands of her hair framing her face like thunderclouds. Just tell me what I walked into. Daniel's eyes danced with malice. Just a family reunion gone wrong, he quipped. But before anyone could respond, she held up a hand, and as if the world had gone still, she said, No. I won't let you tear into this. Not anymore. My heart quickened. What more could emerge from this pit of emotions? Just observing Lily's resolve, I felt hope entwine with foreboding. Please just say what you have to say, Clara interjected, trying to hold the raucous tide of words at bay. With a deep, quivering breath, Lily trained her gaze on me, her voice trembling but steady. Evan, I can't keep this a secret any longer. It's important. You need to know. And just like that, an unsettling realization twisted in my gut. Her statement hung thick in the air, a cloud willing to unleash a storm of truths that would change everything. And all just before the door could close on a moment I once thought I had begun to reclaim. The air was taut, charged with the anticipation of unspoken fears and buried truths. As Lily's words lingered, an undeniable tension wrapped around the room like a heavy fog, stifling our breaths. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, the anxiety sharp and palpable. I knew something important awaited, a revelation that could shatter our frail attempt to mend what was broken. Lily, what do you mean? I managed to breathe out, eager yet terrified, knowing the stakes had risen dramatically. Clara's hand slipped into mine, her warmth a lifeline amidst the brewing storm. I could sense her fear mirrored in my own. We were treading on shaky ground without breaking eye contact. Lily gulped down her uncertainty, her fingers fidgeting with the sleeve of her coat. I've been doing some digging, she revealed, her voice quieter now, as if she were afraid that too loud a proclamation might tear apart the fabric of our fragile reconciliation. There are things about your father's past, Evan. Things that never reached you but may have shaped your journey. The declaration hit me like a serrated blade, slicing through my thoughts. My father, whose shadow loomed large over my life. A cold history of unfulfilled expectations and silent judgments. A well of unanswered questions swelled inside me, tangled with dread. What do you know? I asked, needing her to unravel the secret threads tugging on my heart. It's not just about his disappointment, she continued, her voice wavering yet resolute. There are complexities, struggles, matters that make his harshness seem tangible. I think her words faltered, but Clara squeezed my hand tighter as if sensing the quake beneath my veneer of stoicism. I think you should hear it from him. It's time. My mind raced, churning with fragments. My memories of my father's frustrations, his relentless push for excellence, but never offering gentle hands to help. I had always perceived that as a personal failure, a void within me that could never be filled. What could Lily have discovered that could shed light on the essence of my reality? Before I could process it further, Clara stepped forward, her protective stance unwavering. What do you want us to do with this information, Lily? She implored, her fierce love for me apparent. A mother's conviction challenging the chaos. Whatever it is, it sounds heavy. We deserve to hear it out in the light, not in shadows. I believe there's a chance for forgiveness, for understanding, Lily replied, looking so fragile yet determined. All these years, secrets have haunted your family, Evan. But buried pain doesn't have to define you. It could lead to a new narrative, one where you truly understand who you are and who he was. And maybe even grant you a chance to rewrite your own story. The words breathed into me an exhalation I didn't realize I had been holding. Yet beneath that budding hope rested the realization that facing the past might mean digging through my father's failures as well as my own. As the weight of the unknown pressed down, it ignited a flame of fear. What if I wasn't strong enough to confront it all? I just need to know why, I whispered, my voice barely audible, the vulnerability revealing itself like the fragments of light piercing through clouds. Why he could never love me enough to accept my failures as part of who I am. My question hung in the air, an inquiry begetting countless echoes of heartache. Lily's eyes softened. Because he feared, he was afraid of becoming what the world labels as a loser, Evan. His past shrouded him in shame, and it bled into how he raised you. I think he was trying to save you from that pain by holding you to an impossible standard. The room now felt charged with revelation and reckoning. Clara stood close to me, her worry etching lines across her forehead, knowing that no matter what was shared, the past could unwittingly reshape all of our futures. I had only ever dreamt of a way to break free from my father's expectations. What would it mean to learn of his pain? To realize it wasn't just my burden to carry. Alone? A part of me thrilled with the silver hope shimmering within uncertainty, but another part quaked at the thought of unveiling a mystery that had haunted my life. What if his secrets only deepened my struggle? What if unearthing the whys exposed yet another layer of disappointment? Lily, I said, can we just take a moment? If what you're saying is true, what do we even do with that? How do I confront a ghost that has haunted me for so long? Can I really change the script of my life? The creak of the old floorboards sounded as Daniel interjected, his skepticism resurfacing like a tempest. How does this really help you, Evan? Do you really think understanding your father's failures will erase your own? Stop! Clara shouted, her voice breaking the sudden tension that wrapped around Daniel. This isn't about you, Daniel. It's about Evan's journey. It's about family. It's about, but the distraction allowed the monumental moment to dangle precariously, and as we were each about to pivot toward healing, one more unexpected knock reverberated through the room. All eyes turned towards the door, which creaked open slowly to reveal an unfamiliar figure shrouded in shadows, casting doubt on the vulnerability we had just begun to embrace. My heart sank, realizing we were on the precipice of abrupt change, and everything teetered, waiting for that one whisper of truth to capsize our aspirations, waiting for who might walk in to unveil stories that had yet to surface. I stood frozen, uncertainty coiling around my limbs like a vine, stifling any thoughts I had about moving forward. The figure at the door was a stranger, cloaked in an aura of unsettling familiarity that sent shivers down my spine. Clara's grip tightened around my hand, her warmth grounding me, even as my pulse quickened with anxiety. Who are you? I finally managed to ask, my voice shaky but projecting the thread of courage I could muster. The figure stepped forward into the dim light of the room, and as the shadows retreated, my breath caught. It was a woman, her face lined with age but marked with an unmistakable resemblance. I felt tug at my heartstrings. I'm Vivian, she said quietly, her gaze darting to each of us, as if measuring the weight of unspoken truths. I'm your father's sister. The revelation shattered the moment, sending ripples of disbelief coursing through me. My father had a sister I never knew existed, and suddenly, the air was thick with the need for answers. The room felt both smaller and larger, the gravity of unaddressed family dynamics pressing down upon us like a brick wall. Clara released my hand and stepped back, her protective instinct flaring as she instinctively scrutinized Vivian. "Why are you here?" she asked, a fierce tenderness communicated through her narrowed gaze. Vivian's expression softened, yet the tension in her posture remained taut. "I've been searching for a way to connect with Evan. I've heard things what you're going through, what he is struggling with, and there are stories that need to be shared before it's too late." Just like that, the foundation of my reality trembled beneath me. I took a step forward, drawn towards the unknown which seemed to call to me like a siren. I looked into her eyes, searching for some semblance of the past I had only begun to uncover. "What do you want to tell me? What does my father's past hold?" Vivian inhaled deeply, as if steeling herself against an invisible storm. "Your father was a complicated man, Evan. He carried burdens that stained his heart, and it was those shadows that drove him to act out of fear rather than love. But within that fear lay his own untold struggles. You see, we weren't raised in a conventional family. There were deep-seated beliefs that twisted our intentions, just as they twisted his." My thoughts collided in a whirlwind, each pulling me in a different direction, searching for clarity amid chaos. I had often imagined my father's history as a single thread of disappointment and aspiration, one that had eternally woven itself into my being. But now, here was an unexpected opportunity to examine the tapestry of who he was, a complicated masterpiece of frailty and resilience I desperately needed to understand. Clara's fierce compassion emerged once more. "If he didn't love Evan like he deserved, that's not an excuse, Vivian. It's just another part of the narrative that hides the decisions he made. Secrecy doesn't heal wounds, it deepens them." Vivian nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in Clara's words. "I know. But the healing isn't just for Evan. It's for all of us, for your family. Our family." She hesitated before continuing, the weight of her words heavy with unspoken histories. "There's more. There's a reason I stayed away. A reason your father distanced himself from all of us after our parents passed." The room echoed with the complexity of emotions swimming in each person's gaze, and hope flickered amidst the shadows. Could this truly be the moment we all sought, a chance for reconciliation, understanding, and perhaps even forgiveness? A path illuminated by the very things that had long imprisoned us. Yet just as the glimmer of warmth began to wash over my anguish, another wave of discontent crashed into our harbor, and Daniel broke the silence. His voice was cold, sharp like frost on bare skin. "What are you doing here? Why should we believe anything you say?" Vivian's confidence momentarily faltered, her vulnerability cutting through her composure like ice. The air chilled as Clara glared at Daniel, as if daring him to unleash the storm he often stirred. "Honestly, Daniel?" she shot back, anger rising in her voice. "It's not about belief. It's about family. Sometimes strangers might hold the threads of your past, and denying that connection only leaves us more fractured. We need to listen." But Daniel crossed his arms, the walls of skepticism firmly raised. "And go where with this? What if there's nothing but more hurt waiting on the other side?" With each charged exchange, the atmosphere crackled. The very fabric of our tension swirled, igniting a need for resolution even as uncertainty loomed. My heart raced, caught between hearing this woman's truth and fearing how it might unravel the little pieces I had collected, all of which dangled precariously now as I stood there, wrestling with the beast of my apprehension. An undeniable urgency surged within me, something that felt like destiny. I stepped closer to Vivian, my own heart echoing with unvoiced hopes. "Please," I said, my voice trembling yet earnest. "Tell me everything. I need to know the truth even if it hurts. Because continuing in silence, it's already painful." Vivian's expressive eyes shimmered, revealing depth that spoke of trials endured alone. But just when she began to open her mouth to speak, a muffled sound reverberated through the air. The phone on the side table, forgotten in the whirlwind of revelations, began to ring. We all turned towards it, the echo of that single sound a sudden reminder of reality intruding upon our fragile cocoon. As I reached for the phone, my heart was a drumbeat of anxiety, an uncertainty settling over me like a shroud. When I lifted it to my ear, all that awaited me was silence. An ominous calm before the storm, a moment that felt like a knife waiting to fall. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but before I could utter a word, the line crackled with life. A voice, strained and unfamiliar, asked a question that froze time itself. "Is this Evan? You need to come home now." The cliffhanger trembled in the air, leaving us all suffocated beneath the weight of implications, to discover answers, to uncover memories, and now, to confront a new challenge looming on the horizon. A revelation waiting just behind the next door, tempered by the bitter reality that this journey, however daunting, was finally in motion. In the chaos that ensued, the world seemed to contract and expand around me, a swirling tempest of emotions that I could barely grasp. The voice on the other end of the phone compelled me into a reality I had long tried to escape from. "Evan, are you there?" it pressed, nudging me back into focus. The tone was urgent, familiar, pulling at the threads of history I had yet to face. "Who is this? What do you mean, come home now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper despite the maelstrom around me. All eyes locked onto me, waiting for the unraveling of this thread that could knit us back together or tear us apart. "It's about your father," the voice replied, a wave of recognition washing over me. Each word dripped with an urgency that sent shivers through my bones. "You need to get here right away." The room shrank beneath the weight of those final words, coiling uncertainty tightening its grip, but I could feel a flicker of determination igniting at the base of my spine. The ghosts of my past were not yet through with me. "Why now?" I pressed, even as I felt Clara's hand squeezing mine in silent solidarity, anchoring me in the midst of this approaching storm. "Yes, gone." There's nothing left to say. But there, amid the din of chaos that was now a mix of uncertainty and anger, Vivian stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with something akin to understanding. Maybe this is exactly what he wants, to share something that never had the chance to be said before it was too late. "There is so much about your father that you don't know," she urged, a tremor in her voice that struck a chord deep within me, stretching the boundaries of grief that in that moment, I felt the weight of my father's life crushing down, the echo of words unuttered, the joy and anguish of the man I had always assumed I'd failed to measure up to. I turned back to the phone, that lifeline to a past yet to be discovered. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steadied by a murmur of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was not a burden but a blessing in disguise. "I'm an old friend," the voice said. "It's time for you to come home and learn the truth about your father and yourself. You can't run from this anymore. You deserve to understand." Suddenly, an echo of memories crashed through me, shaping fragments of a life that had colored my perception of inadequacy. I glanced over at Evelyn, who was watching me intently, already sensing the shift in my resolve. It was as if we shared an unbreakable thread that pulsed with familial love and understanding that together we could unearth whatever dark secrets lay beneath. "Evan, where home is," Clara began, but I read the worry that flickered in her eyes. The fear of what might be uncovered made her voice tremble. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Waves of uncertainty crashed within me, but the weight of my father's legacy was heavier still. "Yes," I asserted, my voice steadying. "I need to and I want to. I can't keep living in fear of shadows that may no longer have power." With that, the moment crystallized, an instant suspended in time that transcended the heaviness of Daniel's laughter and the specters of my past. Clara's face, filled with a fierce resolve behind her concern, told me she believed in my journey. And in that embrace of faith I took in a deep breath, feeling the pull of family surrounding me. "Aunt Vivian," I said, shifting my gaze to her, "I want to hear about my father. Can we go together?" The ancient ties of family pulled at her heart of pain, desperation, hope, and love. She nodded, a silent promise binding us together. "Yes, but first," she sighed, drawing me closer, "we must be prepared for what we may find. It's not just a matter of unearthing truths. Sometimes it's about understanding the hearts that beat within them." With her words echoing in my mind, I turned to face everyone else gathered in the room. They each had their battles before them. Leo, still racked with confusion yet undeniably supportive, Evelyn, standing fiercely beside me, and Clara, grounding my every fear with love. My heart swelled with gratitude and sorrow at once. "Let us do this," I said, the words vibrating with a newfound conviction. "Together." In that moment I knew whatever lay ahead, it would be a path paved with solidarity, love, and the incessant belief that family, despite the scars of the past, was worth fighting for. We stepped out into the cool night, the air crisp against my skin, invigorating me with each breath. Vivian led the way, guiding us forward as the silence of the night enveloped us like a protective shroud. Our shadows mingled and stretched, growing larger under the streetlights flickering in the dusk. As we walked, I could feel hope blossoming within the depths of fear, a wildflower breaking through concrete. The road stretched before me, winding like my own tumultuous journey toward acceptance, forgiveness, and uncovering the truths that could heal generations to come. The weight of Daniel's laughter faded into the night, replaced by the echoing chorus of my family's unwavering support. And just as I felt the first glimmers of warmth pouring over the shimmering beast of uncertainty, the final realization settled like a comforting embrace in my heart. Sometimes the greatest journey is the one that leads us home, not just to a place, but to our understanding, our vulnerabilities, and ultimately our truth. It's through that journey that we could finally rewrite our story. And in the gentle quiet of that dawning understanding, I knew that while the past could never be undone, it no longer defined my fate. At that moment, ready to embrace whatever revelations awaited me, I took a deep breath. I am not a loser, I whispered to the night, the words rising into the ether as a mantra, a sentiment that would echo in my soul as long as I had the courage to carry it forward, because the journey of reclaiming my narrative had just begun, and for the first time in years, I truly felt ready to walk it.